Are we really asking this?
Yes, we are.
Okay, fine. Hey there, my name is Julia, and you're watching The MCs, music at the core of everything. And today we're asking the question, what's harder to do, opera singing or metal screaming? Let's find out. So, let's see. One takes years of formal training offered as a legitimate college major by artists who have spent their entire lives studying the classics just to be beat out year after year after freaking year by the skinny redhead who supposedly has more controlled vibrato. My ass. Sorry about that. I mean, there's just so much competition in the opera world. Just the competition alone ensures difficulty. And adding on all of the rigorous training and studying that you have to do to just even be considered for a spot on any stage, that compared to some guy shoving a microphone down his throat, yelling at the top of his lungs? Or at least that's what people think. But classically trained, world-renowned vocalist Melissa Cross would disagree. She's been training metal vocalists how to scream for over 15 years. She'd probably refer you to the students who tried yelling at the top of their lungs just to show up at her front door coughing blood. Yeah, like blood. Freaking blood. Real blood coming from their mouths.
Hearing their vocal cords, I can't even imagine.
Now, if we're asking whose genre is harder to perform, no mas. If you're doing it like this, you win. But not being injured and actually being good at doing it is actually implied in the question. So, she'd also tell you that it's not just the guys either. There are some hardcore metal girls out there too. Bands like Kitty were the first to challenge the idea that only guys could channel the aggression and angst that came to identify the still pretty new genre of metal. So how is it possible for girls who sound like this naturally?
Vocalisten die altijd zeggen van, oh ja, ik krijg veel aandacht omdat je een meisje bent en zo. Maar ja.
And then are able to make their voice do this. After watching Melissa teach the techniques to her students for how to scream and growl for like hours on end without even barely a tickle in their throats, I realized they don't really scream loud at all in most cases. These artists use techniques like the fry scream, named by Melissa herself, that utilize false chords. Let's let the website The Keynote explain. We have two sets of vocal cords. First, the normal vocal cords, the folds of tissue in the throat that allow us to sing and speak conventionally. Second, we have the false or ventricular cords, a thick fold of mucous membrane which has a minimal role in normal phonation. That's the best explanation I could find that actually helps to visualize it and understand it. And the same site gives us their own explanation of different metal styles of singing, like the low growl. This is gonna be fun. The low growl, the mid-low growl, the raspy high screams, and the sing screams. And before all the metalheads start screaming at me, I know you guys have more styles and more sub-styles to describe all these different kinds of voices and sounds. It's complicated, I get it, but that's the point. If anyone was thinking a scream is a scream, a yell is a yell, that ain't it. The technical, physical, and mental acumen required to do this type of vocalizing is just as intense and demanding as any classical study, especially when it comes to varieties found in a specific genre and the mastery of skill needed to pull this stuff off. And when you add in the other part, you know, the actual screams of pain that can come from still learning all of this, or the fact that a simple misstep here or there can lead you to literally tear your vocal cords and start coughing up blood, I think there's actually an argument that can be made for metal screaming being harder than opera singing. So it's a persuasive argument for sure, but is it true? I still think it's the academic aspect of opera, developed over hundreds of years of music, storytelling that you have to memorize and interpret, written by geniuses who purposefully stretch the boundaries of the human voice. Geniuses recognized by even the metalheads, geniuses like Mozart, Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, that add a level of difficulty that proves harder to strive for and accomplish in the end. Take for instance, Der Hölle Rache from Mozart's Die Zauberflöte, where the singer is not only expected to absolutely perfectly stay on pitch through scales and intervals that even instruments like the flute or the violin find hard to intonate properly, but then she's asked to sing an arpeggio, andante, which is like a fairly fast speed, and staccato, which is short, detached notes, over octaves, which, like, without a crack, seamless, not even taking a breath in between, it's like nearly impossible to do. It's super hard. I think opera is the hardest to perform and master out of the two, but so what? I mean, I could easily be wrong. Quite frankly, I don't even think we're asking the right question. I'm much more interested in why I was so sure that opera would win out in the first place. So, okay, cards on the table? I wasn't really convinced at all. I have vocal students of my own that look to me to help them develop their metal scream. Of course, I knew there was a lot of skill and technique associated with metal screaming, but this entire episode has been a purposeful demonstration in the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias whereby people with low ability, expertise, or experience regarding a certain type of task or area of knowledge tend to overestimate their ability of that knowledge. In this experiment, I acted like, because I was a singer, I of course would know what was hard or what was easy about metal screaming, even though I've never really done it in a musical context in my life. I just knew that I could do it, and without much effort. Again, just acting. But how many singers of you out there, either metal or opera, thought you knew the answer to this question, even before the intro credits were over? And not just the singers either. Let's take a poll on those of you who clicked on this just because you love metal. What did you think? And vice versa, those who love opera. I would bet that you rolled your eyes just a little when I started talking about the academic credentials of the piece I was singing. And if you're an opera enthusiast, I bet you were thinking of all the difficult arias you've heard of when I was explaining the difficulties of metal scream. Let's face it, the question of what's harder to do is really a silly question that's meant to cause division, if we're honest. The better question is, what can we do to counteract this bias within ourselves? What techniques can we use to remind ourselves to be open to all possibilities and to listen actively to each other, recognizing our bias, and then actively setting them aside, and love the learning process without preconceptions? So, because we all have cognitive bias in some way or another, even if this example didn't represent you specifically, I ask, what can we, all of us, do to counteract this cognitive bias within ourselves? That, I don't know. Do you? Leave it in the comment section and let's learn together. And as always, thanks for watching, guys. Bye.